controversial subjects with the facts can be tense, but we are A$AP Science here to make things make sense.
So today we are talking about the brain, the power of imagination. And I know that sounds corny, but there is so many cool studies and interesting research.
You sound like Mel Robbins. I'm kidding.
Wait.
Let them.
Let them. I still don't even listen to
No, but it's
you
just
really
like the way you were just talking. It's like, it's so true. It's like it's true.
when you speak with conviction.
Yeah, conviction. It's like, I was like, but you're actually
why'd you interrupt
right.
me then?
No, because I was obsessed.
Okay, let me continue. There's so many cool studies really highlighting the impact that your brain can have on your body, on your life. We're going to talk about placebo today and some really interesting studies that show like even when you know something is a placebo, it can
works.
still work.
Okay.
It works. And yeah, there's one in particular I'm going to talk about today around mental health and imaginary placebos, which I just thought was so cool. And had to bring to the pod.
Okay, so a placebo, or as I like to call it, a placebo, is an intervention, but it releases no medical agent into the organism, nevertheless inducing positive treatment expectations. And it can prove especially beneficial in studies on pain and depression.
Yeah,
and I'm going to explain today why, because I actually have a study on why placebo works. It's really cool.
Oh, cool. Well, I was going to say, it's crazy to think that not that long ago, placebos weren't the standard for studies. Like, drug companies didn't have to prove their drug worked better than like just the mind.
They were probably like, wow,
pill.
it's not working better than a placebo. We're going to ignore that. And hopefully no one ever looks into it.
I guess like it's just interesting to see how science has evolved. It's like no fault of necessarily anyone that they would just be like, hey, people feel better when they take this pill that gives them energy.
It's
like,
insane.
That was the belief of like, it's not insane to say, hey, people are feeling better. We can mark down that people feel better.
No, sorry. Right. It's insane when you actually read these studies. Like, I feel insane. I feel
the
like
amount of medications
crazy.
and drugs too that were like invented through the 1900s and claims that were made before they were really testing against a placebo or a control group is really interesting. But in the more recent years, it's like the placebo itself, even when you tell someone this pill is sugar and nothing else, but I want you to take it for your IBS.
Well, I have a study that's literally like you just imagine you take a pill. You don't even take a pill.
Did you steal my study?
Wait, is yours about exams?
Yes, Greg. That's
yours?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's so funny. That's the one that I also
literally
was losing my mind
I'm gonna
over.
make this podcast because of this study.
Oh my God, I didn't know that was the one.
It's about anxiety.
Is it from Nature magazine?
Yeah. No, I think it's from Cell or something. Let me see. I have it.
Cell. I'm kidding.
Hold on.
Okay.
Oh, it is from Nature. Yeah.
Yeah. LOL. Okay. Well, I have other ones too. Don't worry.
I do
but
too.
I also was blown away by that.
Okay. Why don't we start there then?
Okay.
Because
I
think this is the most fascinating thing. So
it was crazy.
I'm going to give the listeners a little bit of an exercise. I want you to take a second, close your eyes or keep them open, whatever you want. And pretend you have a stressful or anxiety inducing event coming up. That might be an exam. That might be a presentation. That might be a date you're about to go on. There's something that's causing you anxiety, and it's coming up in a week. Now, take a moment with your eyes closed, and I need you to imagine a pill. Now, this pill is a magic anxiety med that will manage and lower your anxiety. I want you to picture it in its packaging, and then imagine yourself taking that pill out of its packaging. Maybe you're popping it out, putting it in your hand, and now put it in your mouth. You got a little bit of water, swallow it down.
Gulp.
And go. And now I want you to do that twice a day for the next 3 weeks before that event comes.
You are so Mel Robbins right now. I love it. That's crazy.
So
did you do it?
That is what this study had participants do leading up to an exam. And they were basically asking the question.
Wait, I want to say one thing about this
course.
first, which is that in light of the high prevalence of test anxiety, 53% of German freshman medical students are affected by it. It has a negative impact on educational performance, and that the test anxiety for medical students was a really great condition for this test in this study.
Totally.
So it's like,
and it's like all these people are doing one thing at once.
Yes.
It's a great situation to be able to test because lots of people have anxiety leading up to exams.
Yeah, this study is about a medical test, and so it's like you did a good job of being like, what is something that's going to give you anxiety? But just so you know, for the study, that was an important part, I thought, of the study. Like, what a perfect thing to measure
up to, and there's a lot of conversation around testing in particular not being suited for everyone, because some people's anxiety might actually impact their ability to take tests, even though they're incredibly intelligent and know lots of information. Like, testing itself may be a confounding variable in how smart somebody is.
Okay, so they got like a third of them to picture taking a pill.
Yes.
And then they got a third of them
to take an actual pill,
but
which was a placebo
but they were
pill.
told it's a placebo pill.
Yeah, it would be like just a pill that's made of sugar or something.
But they actually go, this is a placebo.
Yeah.
And then a third did nothing.
But they're like, it's not real, but imagine it's for your anxiety.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, they're not even giving them like...
They're not pretending it's real.
And the control group just doesn't do anything.
Yeah. So they can measure the baseline of anxiety in people.
Yeah. And they're also asking them about their sleep, like their performance on the test, their anxiety around it, stuff like that.
Yeah. There were like a bunch of secondary testing factors. Okay. What do you think the result was? Because obviously we're leading you to this answer. The people who took the imaginary pill had less anxiety than the control group and experienced a reduction in anxiety of the same magnitude of the physical pill that was taken.
The physical placebo pill.
Physical placebo pill. So no one in this study was taking an actual anti-anxiety med.
So both the placebo pill and pretending to take a placebo pill worked.
Yes. And on top of that, their performance on the exam was actually better as well.
Insane.
So just imagining that you're taking a daily pill twice a day in this instance, obviously we can't say this stuff. We're going to talk about like the more nuanced version of like what kinds of things can this kind of practice do. But in this instance, I just thought that was wild. And more I've been like, I need to do this. I get how you're saying like this was to a specific event. It may be harder.
I think it's like you have to do it if you have an anxiety inducing event coming up, which can sometimes be rare.
But I would say like I will hope that more studies will be done on like general anxiety disorder. Of course, many people take actual medication that helps them, and I'm not suggesting you shouldn't do that, but it would be cool to see if some effect can be had from taking placebo pills or imagining taking placebo pills on the impact of generalized anxiety.
Yeah, so the other studies I looked at were about literally how this could possibly work. Mm-hmm. This one's really new, so I thought it was interesting because at a certain point, scientists are going to have to start being like,
here's
why?
The mechanism of action.
So, okay, our expectations are like a huge part of our psyche, obviously. It controls how we experience the present and the future. And all of our expectations are built on prior experience. There's also like crazy cognitive studies about expectation. Like so much of your whole existence is just your brain expecting and predicting things.
Yeah, not your conscious expectations, but like
unconscious almost.
Yeah, everything you actually see, some neuroscientists would argue, is actually not what is actually there. It's what your brain is predicting.
It's like, there. Oh, I walked through the front door of my house. I'm not even really having to like pick up any cues. My brain's like, yeah, we're in your house. Mm-hmm. And then if you go really like high in Mel Robbins-y, flighty, like whatever
You're
about this.
You're obsessed with this woman.
I know. Well, I just mean like this, just like so.
Let's get her
like,
on the pod.
Pop science. Like it's like, and then sometimes you're expecting your husband to be in a bad mood, and all of a sudden you're in a fight. Like there's that kind of stuff. Like there's like you can use this type of science in a really personal way, which people love. That's why I'm bringing up Mel Robbins or Huberman, because it's all about like self-help. Like even that guy, Michael Singer, it's like about the idea of things are just what you make them. Like there's a neurological and neuroscientific like backing to that gets extrapolated in pop science because it's like fun, which is kind of what we're doing here. But this study was more specific, and it was about how placebos work through the reward circuitry of the brain, the dopamine, like essentially like the like ventral striatum dopamine like pathways in your brain are the way that they think these placebos work, which is why they work on really dopamine related diseases like pain and depression. So essentially like neurobiological studies on the placebo effects in pain and depression suggest that the placebo effects involves dopamine related processes. Specifically, the placebo reward hypothesis states that the effect of positive treatment expectations may be directly linked to the striatal dopamine release aspect of your brain, like the ventral striatum, which in turn it like creates a reward, like that rewarding feeling around the placebo that you took. You're actually able to like release the dopamine because you think you should. Yeah. And it implies that they're like particularly like placebos are particularly effective in mental disorders that are dealing with this very specific dopamine pathway. And I was like, okay, it's literally that your brain is able to release like the hormones and have neurophysiological responses to it by thinking it should.
Right.
So there's like an actual physical change. And I think what they've found is because it's related to your dopamine pathways, those are really important aspects of pain and depression.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, because it's
These are all
not like
perceptive things.
Yeah, like there are other things that dopamines aren't working as well for.
Yeah, it's important to recognize, at least to this stage, we have no evidence that placebo has ever helped like fight a cancer or a
bacterial infection.
Yeah, so not to say like maybe some science could find that like improvement might be faster in conjunction with real meds if you believe they're going to work versus if you don't. Like the power of the body to like help heal itself obviously exists.
But if there's actually a dopamine response to decrease pain, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And your brain's able to kind of do it. It was what they're starting to see. It's a really new study. I bet there will be more on why exactly.
I know we had a previous episode on placebo. I don't know if we covered this one, but we were listening to like the Science Versus episode on placebo recently, and there's a guy who studied even like people in high altitudes and whether or not they could trick their body into believing they were getting oxygen or not. And they realized you can't unless you first prime their body by actually associating, like, say, I give you this mask, and the first 4 times it's actually oxygen.
Then the fifth
time, if I don't put oxygen in it, but you still take it and you don't know, your body might create that response. It may not be as strong, but it's like once your body has associated things that are actually functioning internally in your body, it learns that response that when you breathe in this thing, oh, my body now is like ready to create or make more bioavailability to the oxygen to my muscles and cells and stuff like that. So I think that's pretty cool. It's not like placebo is always as strong, but they're finding out more and more ways to play with the idea of placebo to minimize how many drugs people have to use.
Yeah.
So, okay, a few other studies that I looked into because imagination or mental imagery has been used in sports. So, for example, there was a group of golfers that they literally...
Is golf a sport? Give me a break.
Like, yeah, fair.
I'm kidding.
Okay. They got a bunch of them to practice in their mind for 6 weeks. Another group only physically practiced, and a third practiced physically and in their mind over the course of those 6 weeks. The fourth group was a control who like just did the normal.
I was like me, never played golf.
Yeah. So outside of the control group, every group saw improvement. Obviously, if you're practicing physically or mentally. Physical plus imagination led to the biggest improvements. So even more than the people who were practicing every day, it's like if you were then at home, just imagining your stroke, firing those neurons. Because the thing is, when you imagine doing a physical activity, your brain actually like goes through.
I need to imagine painting more. Just realizing that. Yeah, like it's like, because my arm hurts and I'm struggling with painting right now. It's like, oh, just picture it.
Yeah. What was interesting to me is that the group that practiced physically and the group that had just only imagination saw similar results.
Yeah, that's
They were not as good as the one who did both, but it's like, wow. Obviously, you have to be an experienced person to be able to use your imagination to practice something. You can't just like never have touched a golf club and just imagine doing it. Like you need to be using the neurons that have associated with like how I'm going to have my best stroke or whatever. Another meta-analysis, which was 36 studies, found that mental imagery increased people's performance. So, like if they would literally, it was like gymnasts and basketball players would imagine themselves practicing, and they could actually mark that the ones who did that were better performing, which I thought was interesting. Going back to pain, there's studies that have been just as simple as put your hand in this freezing water, and then the other group's going to...
Oh, they do that at the Science Center. RIP, the Science Center.
What did they do?
Fuck Doug Ford. You would hold on to the freezing cold pole. I'm actually going to cry. I miss the Science Center. You would hold onto the freezing cold pole, and they'd ask you to like picture yourself on your favorite vacation, and you could just like hold it for so long, and then they'd be like, now think about how cold the pole is, and then you like have to take it off.
Can't last. Yeah. So in this, it's like they tell some of the group to imagine they're wearing a warm glove, and they're able to withstand and feel less pain during that experience. Wow. So it's like your mind is so powerful and it's so cool and it feels like magic, but it's just such an interesting field of study that I'm fascinated by, because some of it is so bizarre. I think a lot of the researchers specifically looking at placebo can't necessarily say why things are happening the way that they're happening.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty fascinating. There is, I know we've talked a little bit about like aphantasia on this podcast, which are people who can't imagine things in their mind. And that can be a challenge.
That's aphantasia is when you can't.
Yeah. So if you're, maybe some people pronounce it aphantasia, but if you have this condition, it means like if I ask you to picture a tennis ball in your mind, you actually don't see anything. Whereas people with hyperphantasia like can see a ball in detail, can rotate it around their mind. Obviously, being able to mentally imagine things is an important skill in this instance. If you can't imagine what it looks and feels and goes like to swing a golf club, that might be a limitation in your ability to practice, not physically, but just in your mind.
They should study people with aphantasia in these studies or something?
This study wasn't necessarily on aphantasia, but they were able to show through something called functional imagery training, you can get better at imagining and improving yourself. So you could go through training. Maybe you're somebody who doesn't have like an overly vivid imagination, but you're in sports and you work with a scientist on how to improve your imagery skills. There's like tests they do and things they encourage you to do. And then they show when people improve that, they can also improve their mental imagery to help them with their sport.
Wow.
Which I thought was
That's
really cool.
That's such a sport thing. Like, aren't they always like before an Olympic event, like doing it in their head? Remember figure skaters, you can like see them. They're like,
yeah, like running through it. And it ties back to even like advice for public speaking or events when they're like, go look in the mirror and like celebrate and be like act happy, act like you won, act like you did a good job, and self-talk. It's like all these things create a scenario in your brain where you're it's just like crazy how your mind can not trick itself, but can be so
kind
useful.
of,
yeah,
sort of trick itself.
And I often think about what's the most fascinating to me to think about is, and we've talked a little bit about this on the pod, is like how we really believe our consciousness, that the way that we think is everything, but there's so much our body does that we're totally unconscious of. Like your heart's beating, your kidneys are working, your liver is working, your blood vessels are dilating and contracting. And you don't need your consciousness for this.
That's true.
But what's interesting to me through this is that you can use your consciousness to affect things that you have no idea are happening.
That's
like
crazy.
To imagine a pill and then to realize there's a bunch of biological processes that can be triggered from that you,
like your dopamine system.
Yeah, that you don't necessarily feel like, oh, my blood vessels are relaxing, I'm more relaxed. Maybe you will, but to me that's just like there's like this disconnection, and it's normal, like your brain isn't meant to be connected to all these things. But it's cool how science is able to connect them together and say...
It does make sense, though, that it is so much more related to pain or anxiety and depression and the dopamine system, because it's like that is really based on expectation. Like, you know those feelings. It's like if you're excited about a concert, like you're just going in to see someone you love in a concert. You're going to have so much fun because there they are. And it's like your brain is just tricking yourself into feeling a dopaminergic exciting thing.
Yeah.
Like it's all contextual and cultural. Like,
yeah, it makes sense to me that this kind of science will be maybe not limited to, but obviously
I think
effective
in those
the
areas.
Kind of
mental health, pain. Like even me with like my hurt arm, it's like if I'm feeling good, like truly like we're watching couples therapy and like the pain goes away because I'm like, my brain is distracted. I'm curious. I'm excited. I'm looking at Orna's eyes and I'm just like, I'm feeling so amazing. Like and then all of a sudden the thing ends and I'm like, oh my God, my arm hurts. Like you can see why this could just be so related to very specific types of things that are like so interesting because your body does have like more control over those in this weird way. Like life is about
it's a sticky thing to talk about because obviously there's two risks. One is making people feel like their suffering is their own fault.
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't.
I'm
mean
not saying
that.
you're saying that.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, like, it sucks to hear someone say, well, if you just like change your mind, it's better. Imagine having a pill. I think that's why this is useful to like have a functional way, as opposed to just saying you could just be happy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, like depression is a real disease, and like
And
it's
often
a change in your
requires
brain.
real medication.
Yeah. But I do think that like we all might have experiences. I'm in it right now where I have a lot of pain from my bike accident that comes and goes based on my mental distraction, well-being. Like sometimes I just get like excited about something, or sometimes I get down on something, and then my pain is worse.
Yeah.
Like it's not, it's like I can see how that relates to all of this.
Yes. It doesn't mean that it's caused by your mind, but that your mind can be a powerful force in your perception of it, and how severe it's going to feel at different times. I think what I was going to say is the other risk is this is a field that can take advantage of people, right? So that's when you get people over-promising things, and gurus who are able to say they can cure you with just like medicine is evil and you just need to follow this, this, and this. Obviously, I think everyone listening to this and us, we know like this is all nuanced. Yes, some of the placebo effect is really powerful in a way that's statistically significant, could blow your mind, but that doesn't hold up everywhere. And people can take this idea to the extreme and think that you can cure everything with your mind. And I'm not here to say that's not true, but I'm just saying we do not have evidence or the pathway to figure that out.
And the study that I read, the new one that's so interesting, is like, it's mostly for pain and depression. Like these are like really more influenced by placebo than other things.
Yeah.
But like we are in such an interesting era of like, not to bring it back to Mel Robbins, I obviously read Latam, but an era of self-help as like medicine, almost like in these ways. It's like self-help kind of like is placebo a little bit. Like you probably like literally are like Latam, and then you like feel better. And then it's like, that's a cognitive decision with guidance from wherever Mel Robbins is from, some lady from wherever. Like there, and like there is like, it's like we should do a Mel Robbins episode. Honestly, we could probably explain it. But when she talks, it is insane, the like pacing and the conviction with which she talks. That is like, I do think like 90 to 80% of what makes her effective. It's like Oprah. Like I saw her on Oprah, and it was just like two people who talk with such beautiful confidence to each other, and I was like, I get why this works. Like there is, and
why
like
people sort of follow you.
Yeah, and it's like placebo
your
vibes.
Conviction
it's like
is so strong.
You're able to take in their information. Like I think, Tony Robbins.
Right. There's lots of these kind of like
Joe Rogan,
inspirational people who give you information
with so much confidence that it actually works. Like Huberman's a great example. Like he has this intonation, and he's able to use scientific language in a way that makes you like really believe him, because and like my issue with him is sometimes he goes absolutely off the, like same with Mel Robbins, all of them, they'll eventually go too far for me. But when they're in the like perfect Goldilocks zone for me, I'm like, wow, this is working. Like cognitively, like my brain is releasing dopamine. I'm feeling better because you've given me a practical thing. It's like they're essentially like doling out placebos at all time for mental health things. And now you could argue it works for a reason.
Yeah. I mean, like some of it may be based in actual research and may not always be a placebo if there's like action-based things. But
you know what I'm trying to say? It's like they are based in research, but still that research isn't about placebo. It's just about like an idea that then you take and you feel good about. And it's like, it works. The reason it works is because potentially like a similar placebo vibe.
Yeah, you hope and believe it will work.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden it does.
Yeah.
That time.
Greg's obsessed with that.
Well, what I find so funny is like, they're just, I'm not, like, I guess I am obsessed. I'm obsessed because it's like, it truly is like a phenomenon. Like, even when I was in Spain, like every bookstore, it's just like, Latam. Like it's just everywhere. And it's like a hilarious, simple concept that like anyone could have thought of. And I also think there is this really interesting, like, we're in this era of people, like, I think a lot of it has to do with social media. And even like the girl who interviewed like Meghan Markle, a lot of what they're trying to say is like, post on social media. Like, don't be afraid of other people's judgment. Like, this is my more nefarious idea around it. It's all about like sort of gassing yourself up and not worrying about people's judgment. And I think a lot of it actually is just like people wanting to become influencers, and it's like
hyping each other
it's just helping people become influencers, which I like. This is the part about it that I find embarrassing. There's a lot of other practical things like for your mental health in your life that's good, but there's this really funny like thing where it's like, oh yeah, people are judging you for posting, but like let them judge you.
Right.
And
yeah.
it's like, okay.
I think like you're right. And you know, I've been one to love, like I've read a lot of self-help books in my life, and many of them are great and super interesting and fascinating. But you're right, many also have an angle where it's actually about productivity,
money,
like here we go at the end of all of our podcasts where we're just like, it's about being successful. It's about how to optimize every second of your day.
Getting a bigger
Don't care
TV.
about people so you can keep posting so you can make your business and make millions of dollars.
Let them is actually one, like when I was stoned with my friends and we were all reading it, we were laughing so hard because it's actually so dark because you can just use it to not care about anyone ever.
To like justify your way of doing anything.
Being like you're like, oh, your spouse is upset, let them. It's like, well, you might have like just done something so like there's a really it's like I can see the positive, but with all of these guru-y like competency like people, it's like when they speak with conviction, it's just always be skeptical because they're not usually bringing in the more like vulnerable and nuanced side of things.
Yeah. Yes. And that for me, it's not like I haven't read Mel Robbins' book, but I still think she probably is doing it out of like a lot of people are finding it good to just like give themselves some peace. Like a lot of the human experience is to be highly anxious, and there's a way to kind of quiet that. And a lot of like the people I listen, you know, if I'm listening to Alan Watts or Michael Singer, it's a lot of like, you know, you don't like, let's work on that part and quiet that part down so that you can exist in a way that's a little more harmonious. It's not going to get rid of all the problems.
No.
But it's like, hey, if you can sometimes just say, let them, like, and Mel Robbins has tagged that, but like every guru kind of has like their way to communicate this idea of like, you don't need to be stressed all the time. You do not, your brain is amazing. Humans' brains are amazing.
Yeah, they all have the same point.
But it's like also can
and
make
it's
you
placebo.
Crazy.
It's literally like them being like just placebo calm.
Yeah,
like figuring out how to use a quote unquote placebo. In this case, it's not a pill. It's just like having a mantra. Lady say "let them" to you over and over. Insane book. I did the audiobook and I'd be like, what exactly is she getting at? And then she'd be like, "let them." And he was like, oh, okay, we're back to that. But the thing about her is it's like very like, I was sad because I didn't have a big screen TV and my neighbor did because I had no money. It's like so rooted in like money equals happiness, comparison. Like, so you just find the one for you. And I happened to find the one who was like for like middle-aged moms in like Ohio. And I felt like I related to it. But that's always me. I've always loved Rosie. I've always loved Oprah.
True. Whereas and mine are all like 7-year-old white men who are just like, no, actually most of their traditions come from Buddhism. They're
still white men.
They are, I know, but they're like taking and communicating Buddhist ideals.
But still, it's like we're fucked. We're just like needing all these things from white people.
Well, because we grew up in a culture of whiteness.
Yeah, like, no, but we should still let them. No, we should check ourselves.
Well, I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying obviously it would take people from North American Western culture to explain cultures that speak a different language to a North American audience.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like thinking of the first like Westerners who went to Japan and found this like cultural, religious and spiritual belief system. Of course, they're going to be people who are probably not from that place who are translating it.
Goes to Japan once. So funny. That's such a thing.
Yeah. But back in the day, that would have been so much more significant because like no one would have really had that experience.
Yeah.
Like, I understand now we live in a much more multicultural place, and it's like maybe the people sharing these traditions should have a closer connection to them culturally and spiritually or religiously. But sometimes you need someone from your own culture who can connect those dots between like, we didn't grow up from the age of 0 thinking of the world in these ways.
Yeah, she like Mel Robbins is like such a white, like middle class,
American.
like American. So she talks in that way. She
can relate to people who come from that upbringing.
That's totally her thing. Like she talks so openly. She's like, I never bang my husband. Like she just like talks about things in a way where you're like, whoa, I get why this is working, because people want to hear that. Like she's not ashamed to be like, yeah, my one daughter's so pretty, my other one's a troll. And like she doesn't say that. She doesn't say that, but in her own way. I was like, if I was her daughter, I'd be like, this is so rude, and you're not allowed to say this. Like, and I think that that's why people like it, because she's saying out loud the things that like people don't really want to, people think but don't want to say.
Yes, I think we're in an age of being like overly honest.
Yeah,
like that
vulnerability
resonates.
as power.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting little end to that.
Yeah. Well, okay, we'll take a little break. My what you learn this week is going to be about, can decaf coffee act as a placebo?
Oh, whoa!
Are you able to use that and have your body like get the
That's
kick
so
of
interesting, because
caffeine?
I've no times where I've been like, well, I actually want to like, I don't know, like slam my head against the wall. I'm so sick, and then realize I had decaf.
Yeah, we'll talk about
So I'm curious.
All right, do you want to say what yours is about?
Mine's about the evolution of birds. Duh.
Classic. Okay, we'll be right back.